I'd like to call this session of the Public Service Commission to order. Secretary Burgess, are there any changes to the final agenda?
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. There are no changes to the final agenda.
Okay, thank you. With that, let's proceed right to the first item for discussion, which is item 201, case 12M0476 et al., which is the petition of utility expense reductions, petition for waiver of the Commission's order adopting a prohibition on service to low-income customers by energy service companies, presented by Bruce Alch, Chief Retail Access and Economic Development. Tom Dwyer, Assistant Counsel, is available for questions. Bruce, please begin.
Good morning, Chairman Rhodes and Commissioners. This morning I'm going to be discussing a petition for waiver by an ESCO utility expense reduction of the Commission's December 2016 order. In summary, the December 2016 order directed a prohibition on ESCO enrollments and contract renewals for customers that participate in utility low-income assistance programs. We refer to these customers as Assistant Program Participants, or APPs. The December order also explained that any ESCO that believes that they can guarantee that APPs will pay no more than they would otherwise to the default utility could petition the Commission for a waiver of the December order by demonstrating, 1, the ability to ensure that customers will pay no more than they would have paid to the utility, and 2, an appropriate reporting to verify and demonstrate compliance with these assurances. Petitions were received from 12 ESCOs prior to the January 16th filing deadline that was established in the December order, and each of the petitions were SAPID. Cautionary comments on the petitions were received from the Utility Intervention Unit of the State's Division of Consumer Protection, the City of New York, the Public Utility Law Project, and the New York Attorney General's Office. One applicant withdrew its petition, and the Commission has otherwise ruled on the other 10 petitions for waiver, approving 4 and denying 6. As explained during prior presentations on the waiver petitions, because this process and the requisite demonstration was essentially new territory for each of these applicants, the initially filed petitions were each deficient in various aspects and required clarification. Therefore requested additional information from each petitioner, and when necessary had discussions with the ESCOs during our review of the individual petitions and associated supporting materials. Utility expense reductions petition and clarified proposal was unique in that in addition to meeting the primary concern that gas and electric commodity service be provided at a cost no greater than the default utility on an all-in billed basis, it also proposed to offer its electric APP customers 100% renewable energy product for all of their load. Utility expense reduction further committed to begin transitioning all of its existing APP customers to this product immediately if approved. Utility expense reduction was ultimately able to demonstrate its commitment and technical ability to provide and report on its product, including the ability to provide its electric customers with 100% renewable product that is compliant with the Commission's Environmental Disclosure Program at a total bill cost that will be no greater than the default utility. Staff is therefore recommending that the Commission issue a waiver to utility expense reduction to allow it to serve low-income electric and gas customers. And the draft order also requires semi-annual reporting on the status of its products to these APP customers. The report should include the number of customers served for each commodity and each default utility service area, the monthly amounts billed and the alternative amounts that the relevant utility would have charged, the amounts of any credits issued to meet the price performance guarantee, and a demonstration that the electric load commitment was met with 100% EDP compliant renewable energy. Finally, while the draft order grants utility expense reductions request for a waiver, we believe it is appropriate for the Commission to place a 24-month time limit on the waiver. During that time, staff will monitor ESCO's compliance with the December 16 order requirements And the ESCO will also be able to petition for a waiver, extension of the waiver prior to its expiration. That concludes my presentation. I'll answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Bruce. In December 2016, last year, the Commission issued an order prohibiting ESCO service to customers who are participants in utility low-income assistance programs. And the Commission at that time provided that any ESCO that could guarantee or provide guaranteed savings to those customers could petition the Commission for a waiver. And UER, in this case, I believe, has made the requisite demonstration, which means that it is positioned to well serve customers who will benefit from those services, and it is convincingly demonstrated that it is well positioned to serve those customers. I am going to vote to approve this petition authorizing the company to serve low-income customers. Commissioner Sayre.
I also support this item. It's pretty well settled now how we will rule on these petitions. I support the item as well as, of course, the underlying order that requires ESCOs to provide savings if they're going to serve low-income customers. This appears to be a win-win situation, and if customers can benefit from this service and the ESCO can attract them, that's good.
Thank you. Commissioner Berman.
Thank you. I'd like to caution us that I do believe that how we handle things going forward is very important. And from a global perspective, right now we have reached settlement, or we've reached conclusion on 12 of the items. One has been withdrawn, so we've dealt with 11 of the petitions. So that means that we'd be deciding today, if this is approved, to have granted 5 of the petitions and denied 6 of them. Out of the 6 denials, a few of them have petitioned for rehearing, so those are still pending and will come before us. We also will be handling in the CCAs issues with low-income customers, and how we will be handling the same issues outside of petitions, but in a more global perspective, CCAs and low-income customers, and the same guaranteed saving requirements that will be in them. My concern really lies in, and the reason I've voted no on all of these items, is that I am concerned about doing these individually in standalone petitions, and would rather see a more collaborative process that gets to a more global solution in a more standardized way, understanding that we're going to have to be very diligent in looking at our most vulnerable customers and low-income customers, and working diligently with the ESCOs and the utilities on an individual basis as we're working through some of those challenges in identifying the low-income customers and making sure that the protections are there. However, as we still have those pending petitions for rehearing, and as there still is the ESCO hearing, and some of the bigger issues may impact the low-income customers and all customers in general, I still am uncomfortable in having done these in what I see as a siloed process. So I am going to vote no, but I do understand that I am in the minority on this, but I would like to caution us that as we move forward, we really should be looking at a better longer-term strategy in how we can morph this into a more cohesive process that gets to a better process, not only for businesses and utilities, but really for the customers to fully understand what is available to them and the choices that they they may have, and also to understand exactly what this means as it applies to community choice aggregation, because we aren't looking at those in a petition process, and I am concerned about that. So I will be voting no on this item.
Thank you, Commissioner Berman. Commissioner Alisi.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm satisfied with this recommendation as long as it includes the time limit, and I'll be voting yes on it.
Thank you very much. So we will proceed to call for a vote on this item 201. My vote is in favor of the recommendation to approve Utility Expense Reduction LLC's request for waiver to serve low-income customers as described. Commissioner Sayre, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Berman, how do you vote?
No.
Commissioner Alisi? How do
Yes.
The item is approved and the recommendation is adopted. Thank you. So we will move to the second item for discussion, which is item 202, case 14-M0224, which is the Community Choice Aggregation Data Access Fees Proposal, presented by Ted Kelly, Assistant Counsel. Peter McGowan, Chief Policy Advisor, is available for questions. Ted, you may begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Chair Rhodes and Commissioners. Item 202 is a proposed order establishing community choice aggregation data access fees. This order responds to a directive that started in the generic CCA implementation order, which allowed the proposal of CCA statewide. In that order, the Commission identified the need for 3 types of data to implement CCA programs. The first type is aggregated customer usage data in the municipalities to support procurement. The second type is lists of customer names and addresses to support the mailing of opt-out notices. And the final is the customer-specific information that the ESCO will need to enroll participating customers, as well as the traditional data that flows between ESCOs and utilities using electronic data interchange. In the generic CCI implementation order, the Commission also recognized that developing and providing aggregated data and customer lists would impose costs on utilities, and that to the extent that only a subset of the customers in the utility territory would be CCA participants, it would be appropriate to recover the costs from that subset of customers rather than from all ratepayers. For that reason, the Commission directed the utilities to propose data tariff fees. The utilities did so. Subsequent to the filing of those tariffs, the Commission and staff considered whether the need for aggregated data could be at least partially filled in a more generic manner by the Utility Energy Registry under development by NYSERDA. I will therefore briefly describe the Utility Energy Registry. It is intended to be an online, publicly accessible database that includes aggregated data regarding, among other things, energy consumption, broken down by municipality and by categories of customer, including residential, small commercial, and other. The Utility Energy Registry will serve a variety of purposes, including local energy planning and development, and also has the potential to fill the need for aggregated data for CCA programs, and therefore reduce the need for individualized, customized requests to the utilities. The Utility Energy Registry had a comment period put forth on it, and it was supported by all parties who participated. The proposed order explains that while the Commission supports full implementation of the Utility Energy Registry, further process is needed to ensure that the Utility Energy Registry is as useful and as fully populated as possible, specifically regarding the appropriate privacy standards and aggregation practices. Therefore, the Utility Energy Registry is not being implemented at this time, and instead that further process is being undertaken. Staff reviewed the utility fee proposals regarding the CCA data and requested and received additional information on the costs that the utility would incur in developing and providing data to the CCAs. Because the cost to automate aggregated load data will benefit both CCAs and the development of the Utility Energy Registry, a portion of the automated costs are being assigned to the general body of ratepayers, while the other portion is assigned specifically to the CCA data fees. In addition, the costs related to the uses that are only for CCAs, in particular the customer address lists, are part of the data fees. An appendix is attached to the proposed item that includes the per customer cost by each utility. The utility by utility costs were relatively similar to each other. To promote consistency and simplicity for CCAs statewide, the proposed item recommends a standard per-customer fee of 80 cents per customer for all utilities. The 80-cent fee will be backloaded, with 16 cents due when the request for aggregated data is made and the remaining 64 cents due if and when the CCA has entered into a contract with an ESCO and is prepared to start enrolling customers. This will ensure that the fee does not act as a barrier to municipalities by requiring them to fund the cost before enlisting private partners. Staff believes the proposed fee, which will apply to all CCAs, is reasonable and will facilitate the CCA implementation without unfairly imposing costs on non-participating ratepayers. The fees being established today will be in effect until there is further action by the Commission. We're available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Community choice aggregation is being developed throughout the state. And through the greater bargaining power enabled by the CCA model, communities are enabled to work with their energy supplier to procure resources that better serve their citizens' local energy goals. This order provides a fair and uniform approach to an essential point of enabling CCAs to go forward, an approach on data fees. It will accelerate the opportunity for communities who wish to establish a CCA, and I am going to vote to support this item. Commissioner Sayre.
This is another step forward for REV. I'd be happy to see the CCA market take off, but it's a market and not a mandate, and it's complicated. This item fairly allocates the costs of CCAs to those who benefit, and at the same time it protects consumers' data privacy. Those are my two big concerns, and I think this item satisfies them. So I look forward to seeing the market play out.
Thank you. Commissioner Berman.
Thank you. I actually have a couple of questions. First, I know there is in this order a lot of revisms, but I think it really gets to two really core issues, really just data access fees and then utility energy registry. So really we're really just dealing with those two core issues. So there's a lot in there that in some ways is extraneous, but I think is utilized to explain why we're getting to either the data access fee, what maybe some of the rationale was behind that, and the same with the utility registry. But both of those, the reason I say that is some of those revisms were really the chair and Commissioner Alisi on here, and some of them were things that maybe I hadn't voted with the majority on. So being that what it is, I needed to really parse out what was really, some ways if it was a court order would have been dicta, for lack of a better analogy, and really just get to the heart of what we were doing. So once I got through that, I just wanted to explain that that's really sort of the core issue, right? So being that what it is, when you get to the data sharing fees and the data sharing issue of data sharing really has been a sticking point of CCA development process all along. And really it's been probably an arduous journey for many, and it's sort of been a fight between folks who have felt that they needed aggregated data with enough granularity to be able to use it to seek out a competitive bid, to seek out what exactly they needed to be able to utilize it and whether or not to participate in the market. And utilities, on the other hand, we're very concerned about it from a proprietary perspective, and then consumers from a privacy issue. And so all of those things together created quite a bit of issues, and continue to create quite a bit of concerns and issues. And then what does that mean? And that's sort of where the thrust of a lot of the policy issues come in. And so while it may seem very cut and dry, there's a lot that goes behind that really requires a lot of detailed analysis. And so I think that is very important, and I recognize and appreciate the thoughtfulness that goes into that. So I do think that there also is a very steep learning curve for municipalities on this issue. This is just one issue in a whole host of issues when we get into community choice aggregation. And it is very, very important that we fully understand that, and fully understand the dynamic, and fully understand a lot of the threshold issues and the challenges from that, and fully understand that they don't necessarily have the resources in addressing those issues, or fully understanding what that means. So what do we do? How do we figure out the right fee and work through some of those challenges? Is still really a struggle for me. And when I look at this, I am still a little concerned, and would like a little more clarification on how there was the analysis in the proportionate share, and go through that a little bit, and and maybe delve into a little bit about that.
Sure. So let me just get myself to the right part of the document. So it was something where, we went through kind of a fairly detailed set of information exchanges with the utilities, primarily led by our very able accounting, audits, and finance staff. And when we took a look at it, we took a look at what portions of it involved the aggregated data versus what portions of it involved the customer lists. And then of the portion that involved the aggregated data, we did our best to estimate what portions of that would be necessary no matter what for the utility energy registry versus what portions could potentially be attributable to customized CCA requests. And so that was really how we came to assigning a certain share of the aggregated portion to the general rate base for the utility energy registry, and the rest to the CCA customer fee.
Okay. So there's a given level of estimates in terms of what belongs in the utility energy registry and what belongs in the other category, correct? Is there a determination that later it'll get figured out, or we're just doing this share and it's sort of set in stone then, or is there some wiggle room later?
So I think, as I said, these fees are in place until the commission takes any further action, potentially changes them. So if, as the utility energy registry develops, and when the commission fully implements that, and if there are further developments, the commission certainly has the option to take a look back at this and determine whether that changes anything about what portion should be applied to what, and therefore to update the cost for CCAs moving forward after that new commission order.
Okay. I think that's where my concern and confusion is. I can fully understand applying a data access fee to what's concrete now and apportioning it, especially as it goes to apportioning it to those folks who will be part of the CCA, those folks who are embracing that. My concern gets into the order when it goes into the UER and apportioning some portion of that share to all ratepayers. And that is where I have a concern. And can you explain a little bit that aspect of it and why, if we haven't addressed yet the UER, we're identifying, I think it's on page, hold on, make sure I get the right page. Page 21, we talk about a portion of the cost of generating aggregated data and populating the UER will be allocated to all ratepayers.
Peter, do you want to speak to that maybe?
Sure. Since the comments on the UER and the Commission's urging of the development of the UER, and the comments have broadly supported the UER, it appears that the UER is something that will hopefully relatively soon come into fruition. And given that, apportioning a certain amount of cost to the UER seems a reasonable step.
Okay. I guess this is where I have difficulty with it. We haven't yet addressed what the UER is going to fully look like. The UER has been a work in progress since 2012, is that correct?
15.
Okay. 2015 when DOE gave us a grant.
I don't know about
I don't know all the details. I believe NYSERDA received some sort of grant.
NYSERDA received a grant, I believe, in 2015, 2016 from DOE. It was a grant with 3 other outside the state, I think Maryland, Washington, and Minnesota, I believe, to establish a utility energy registry. I don't know necessarily whether there was any report, if there's been any activity on that, but I do believe that it's an ongoing grant and that it was looking at working with NYSERDA as well as these other partners in terms of establishing a utility energy registry. That's been ongoing. It's been, I think, a very good ongoing work product, and it's been something that we've been working through. Mm-hmm. So my issue is looking at this, we have an ongoing docket, we're looking at different things with the utility energy registry, we're looking at incorporating opportunities in what it means for the data that's needed and what it may look at. So I'm just trying to understand if this is broader, what we may or may not be doing and what that means, for all ratepayers, and whether or not it's appropriate to apply this from a fee perspective. Maybe this isn't the order to be saying that the Commission supports. We could say we think we support establishing the UER, and we may consider allocating to all ratepayers, but why, if we don't know exactly what the UER is going to look like, would we lock ourselves into allocating to all ratepayers?
I think we do have a pretty good sense of what the UER will look like. Staff has been working with all of the parties who have expressed an interest in the development of the UER. All of the parties support the development of the UER, and the Commission has previously urged the development and the implementation of the UER. So we have made a good deal of progress. We have one issue that we want to continue to explore to make the UER as good as we can make it. But I think many things point in the direction of successfully achieving the implementation of the UER.
Okay. These are all the parties in the UER case?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just obviously concerned that this order seems to be locking us into a future item that we haven't before us, and that I'm not really sure that that's an appropriate issue. That's not really appropriate to be locking us into something.
Well, I don't think it locks you in. Obviously, the UER has to be finally brought back to the Commission, and the Commission will have to review the final recommendations and can either accept or not accept. And if it doesn't accept it and the UER is not implemented, then the Commission will be free to reevaluate the apportionment issues.
I think also it says that because eventual access to the UER will benefit ratepayers generally through community-based energy planning efforts to achieve statewide clean energy goals and increase consumer awareness of consumption practices and REV-related opportunities to consume energy more efficiently, a portion of the cost of generating aggregated data and populating the UER will be allocated to all ratepayers, and a portion will be recovered through the CCA fees as described below. My concern is that is a very broad rationale to allocate to all ratepayers, that essentially to achieve statewide clean energy goals and increase consumer awareness of consumption practices and REV-related opportunities to consume energy more efficiently, we're basically allocating something to all ratepayers. And I do believe that if we're doing that, while it may in this case be what we consider a nominal amount, if we take this rationale and apply it to something that may have a lot more dollars to it, and we do that in maybe something else, and then something else, and then something else, that can have a real wide-ranging effect, and we should be very careful in that broad brush and really understand what the rationale is, and so that this very general, broad rationale here applying to all ratepayers should be more thought through, and especially since if it's applying to the UER, which is a item that we're going to be looking at later, and we don't have all of the fine details with it, and yet while there are some parties who seem to be on board with staff, it's not yet before the Commission. Not all the parties, I'm sure, include interested ratepayers or ratepayer associations, and so I'd like to make sure that we don't seem to be indicating how we would be deciding something. I am much more open to not locking myself in now on how I'll be deciding that later, because I really want to evaluate that much more carefully, because that concerns me. So I'm not going to vote for this order because of that issue. I do think it's appropriate that we look more holistically on that, but I appreciate where we're going. I do think that it's important, and I do think we should be very careful on all of these issues. So I will be voting no on this item.
Thank you, Commissioner Berman. Commissioner Alisi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, from my perspective, I think this is a solid outcome, and no doubt that it's the result of some significant effort, and so I will be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you. With that, we now proceed to call for a vote, or I proceed to call for a vote on item 202. My vote is in favor of the recommendation to approve the data access fees proposal with modifications as described. Commissioner Sayre, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Berman?
No.
Commissioner Alisi?
I vote yes.
Thank you. The item is approved and the recommendation is adopted. We move now to item 301, case 17E0526, which is the petition of Consolidated Edison to move a room air conditioning program to Rider L and continue connected devices pilots with modification. Presented by Robert Cully, Utility Engineering Specialist 2. Marco Padula, Deputy Director of Market Structure, is available for questions. Rob, please begin.
Good morning, Chair Rhodes and Commissioners. As the Chair just described, item 301 is a draft order addressing the filing by Consolidated Edison Company of New York, Inc., referred to as Con Edison or the company, seeking approval of tariff amendments related to its residential and small commercial demand response programs. Con Edison currently operates 2 residential and small commercial facing demand response programs, the first of which is the Direct Load Control Program, or DLC program, under Rider L, and the second is the Connected Devices Pilot. The DLC program under Rider L allows customers to enroll smart thermostats, controlling central air conditioning units and Con Edison's demand response program, allowing Con Edison to cycle compressors and modify temperature set points during events. In return, Con Edison pays customers a one-time enrollment incentive and an ongoing annual incentive payment for continuing to participate in the DLC program. Incentive payments under the DLC program are bounded by requiring Con Edison to maintain a passing benefit cost analysis test. The Connected Devices Pilot is a program designed to allow Con Edison to test new Internet of Things controllable devices, demonstrate the effectiveness of those technologies, and run pilot-scale programs to see how the market responds. The main component of the Connected Devices Pilot program is the Smart AC Kit, a smart plug which connects room air conditioner units, those that can be seen in apartment windows throughout New York City, and allows those units to be remotely controllable by both the customer and Con Edison. Con Edison is also currently testing several other technologies, such as room air conditioners with integrated communications and control devices, and communication devices to control packaged terminal air conditioning units, frequently seen in hotels, as well as ductless mini-split heat pumps. The Connected Devices Pilot Program is currently subject to an annual budget of $4 million. In its petition, Con Edison proposed to graduate the Smart AC Kit program from a pilot into Rider L, make several modifications to Rider L as a whole, and continue the Connected Devices Pilot program with a 3-year budget. The draft commission order, if adopted, would accept Con Edison's proposals regarding the Smart AC Kit and modifications to Rider L as proposed. However, the 3-year budget requested by the company for the Connected Devices Pilot program would be modified. So first, graduating the Smart AC Kit into Rider L, allowing Con Edison to provide the Smart AC Kit programs through Rider L would allow the company to reach and engage with a significant amount of untapped load reduction potential. Con Edison will offer participants annual incentives for setting up their enrolled control devices, per event payments for fully participating in an event, and an end-of-year bonus for fully participating in all events. There are approximately 7 million room air conditioners in the company's service territory. However, under the CDP program, that is the Connected Devices Pilot, only 21,000 of those units are currently enrolled in Con Edison's demand response program. With the Smart AC Kit under Rider L, Con Edison expects to roughly double its enrollment in the Smart AC Kit program during 2018 and expects the program to grow by roughly 50% each year for the following 2 years. Regarding changes to Rider L overall, Con Edison proposes to first be able to call test events under Rider L, similar to its commercial demand response programs under Rider T. Second, to allow tenants living in service classification 8, 12, and 13 buildings, as well as tenants living in New York City Housing Authority or NYCHA buildings to participate in Rider L. Test events are a common feature of demand response programs, allowing utilities to test participant response to those demand response events. Currently, Con Edison is allowed to call test events in its Rider T programs, as well as the Connected Devices pilot program, but not Rider L. Allowing Con Edison to perform test events under Rider L will put Rider L on the same footing as those other demand response programs and give Con Edison more insight as to how customers will respond to actual events. Service classification 8, 12, and 13 buildings are generally master metered or redistribution customers whose individual tenants are not specifically Con Edison customers and may not have a meter attached to their individual units. Similarly, tenants living in NYCHA housing are not specifically Con Edison customers and also may not have their own meter. Con Edison estimates that there are approximately 450,000 residential units in these buildings. This represents a significant source of untapped potential load relief, which Con Edison is not currently able to reach. While the draft order allows Con Edison to offer Rider L to these tenants, it also recognizes that there is a potential for double payments to be made to SC 8, 12, and 13 customers participating in Rider T during coincident Rider L events. We anticipate that this impact will be minimal while there is still relatively low penetration of the Smart AC Kit program. Therefore, this draft order directs Con Edison to study the issue during 2018 and report its findings in the 2018 annual report, with associated tariff modifications if the issue is found to be significant. Regarding the Connected Devices pilot program budget, in its petition, Con Edison proposed to continue the CDP program after the Smart AC Kit program graduates to Rider L, with a $12 million budget to be spent over 3 years. Con Edison stated that the $12 million budget would allow it to continue its existing efforts under the CDP program, as well as to pilot up to 4 new technologies which it has not identified yet. While the draft order approves a 3-year budget for the CDP program, which will give the company flexibility to expend funds to maximize program effectiveness, the budget would be set at $7.5 million. This $7.5 million 3-year budget should allow Con Edison to continue ramping up its current technologies and provide funding for 1 additional new technology to be developed under the CDP program. This concludes my presentation, and we are happy to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Rob. The way I see it, we currently have 21,000 electric customers in New York City that participate in Con Ed's Smart AC programs, and we have the potential for millions more to take control of their room air conditioning equipment and provide benefits to the system and earn financial rewards of $25 to $95 per. It's a simple solution. Simple to me. I didn't have to build it. But it involves installing a Wi-Fi equipped sensor or smart plug to a room air conditioner. It's a drop-in solution. And with this order, the Commission would be encouraging greater innovation, especially innovation that is cost-effective, that is now proven, and that is easy. And it will lead to reductions in energy demand and reduction in costs for our energy system. I'm going to vote for this item. Commissioner Sayre.
This item, like so many others, relates directly to REV for me. Rider L and the Connected Devices pilot program are designed for peak shaving. Peak shaving means more efficient use of the energy network assets of New York State, and the improvement of network efficiency is one of REV's key goals. I'm therefore very pleased to see these programs moving forward.
Commissioner Berman.
Thank you. This has been demand response, and these issues have been with us for very long. Actually, this program started out in 2009 and was pre-rev, and actually has really shown a great deal of progression, and Con Ed has been should be commended for the work that it's done in really being very flexible in working with its customers and working with the Commission in changing the program to be more workable and looking at expansions when appropriate. I've been a proponent of modifications when it makes sense, and I am think this is appropriate. I do have a couple of concerns that I just want to look at here. On the NIPA issue and the NIPA customers, and now expanding this to the NIPA customers, and I do think it is appropriate for us to look at, especially the NYCHA customers, and identifying master meter customers and those customers that wouldn't normally benefit from this. But can you explain to me now, from an accountability perspective, now that it's including NIPA, how does that work with the Commission now that we're allowing this?
So from a cost recovery perspective, at the moment, NIPA customers do not pay the monthly adjustment clause surcharge, which these programs are recovered through. However, we anticipate that the impact of any cost shifts from NIPA to Con Edison customers to be minimal, while participation and penetration of these kits is low in the NIPA buildings. The DLM program cost recovery from NIPA is included in a Con Edison petition currently under consideration. That's in case 14E0423, and staff expects to have a recommendation for the Commission to consider in that case sometime during the first quarter of 2018. Was that what you were asking for, Commissioner?
Yeah, yes, somewhat, but I think it goes a little deeper. Page 12 of the order talks about the cost recovery. I am not comfortable with that language. I'm not comfortable with the language because where it talks about regarding cost recovery and it goes into detail, I do think we are appropriately looking at what it means from a cost recovery perspective. I do think we're looking at what it means from limited cost shift from NIPA customers to Con Ed customers. And I do think it is going to be addressing a core issue about cost recovery from NIPA customers. We have been challenged over the years for what it means when NIPA customers are not part of our programs, and we've had petitions for times from NIPA wanting to have their customers part of our programs. At times we've denied them. At times they have, outside of the Commission, LIPA 2 has decided to adopt without Commission input, full Commission input, what the Commission has done, and it may or may not be appropriate. The Commission doesn't necessarily weigh in. My concern comes into from the perspective that here this order is rightfully so saying the NYPA customers, the NYCHA customers, should be participating in the demand response. They're Con Ed customers. It is addressing a critical need. It's appropriate. I think it's great. I think this is wonderful. I think we should include it. To the extent that there is a cost recovery issue, we need to address it. My issue gets into the fact that we are going to be looking at this issue down the road. We're going to have to address it. This language seems to, be teeing it up for a resolution that may be a little bit more global, and seems to make it so that it's going to be applying in a way to other things, to the extent that I want to be very clear that all of these issues need to be fully and carefully thought through, and how it means not only in this particular piece, but in all of the different aspects with cost recovery. But the other larger issue is an accountability perspective, to the extent that NYPA comes under the umbrella of the Commission as a whole when we are allowing them into our programs or being part of it. What's the accountability that the Commission has, or NYPA has, and that we as a Commission as a whole should be involved in? What's the accountability and the transparency and some of the tracking mechanisms that we should be involved in with the programs, the efficiencies of those programs, the collaborative processes, the things that I don't necessarily, as a commissioner who sits on the commission, might not necessarily be involved in, because I don't oversee as a commissioner that. But once it's here now, I think that we do have an obligation to be a part of, not necessarily be micromanaging, but we do need to be accountable to, making sure that it's working right and coordinating in a way that is effective and appropriate and good for all ratepayers and taxpayers. So I just am raising those issues because we're looking at that, and as it hits the cost recovery issue, but on the more global issue, I think we need to look at that. But this issue is hitting a bigger issue that we're going to be looking at in a pending case, and I just want to be cognizant of that issue. As to the, so that's it on the NYPA issue. I do know that there's a study issue on page 11 of this. The pending cost recovery issues we have to address. Accountability issue I've already addressed. The technology issues, here I am a little confused by the discussion on that there are going to be the introduction of one additional new technology, and that Con Ed will be working with staff on that. Can you explain a little bit more what that means? There's going to be four technologies and one additional surprise technology.
So we did not feel comfortable with allowing Con Edison to, or rather, we did not feel comfortable giving Con Edison the requested $12 million for four technologies that we did not know about. We thought that the $7.5 million, given that it's a 3-year budget and we expect to see continuing innovation out of the CDP program, was reasonable to continue their existing efforts, those being for the packaged terminal air conditioners, the PTAC units, and the ductless mini splits. But there's also a number of other controllable technologies that Con Edison is currently scoping out, for example, communication standards, potentially being able to, with a simple chip, turn any device in a home with this communications port into a controllable device. It's one of those programs that we've discussed with Con Edison and is kind of coming down the pipeline, but hasn't specifically been included in the CDP yet. So we're I believe we want to give Con Edison the room to propose one new technology as part of this 3-year budget, but we don't want to give them the whole scope of the 4 new technologies that they requested.
I am a little concerned, though, that we're going to be overly prescriptive, and that in some ways we are going to be hamstringing them in their technology, and that this may wind up actually not doing the actual opposite of allowing timely, innovative technologies to come to market in a way that, regulators are very good at slowing down the process at times. So to the extent that we need to look at how we handle approving movement and budgets in innovation and technologies. I do think that's where, appropriate budgeting in R&D and innovation should go, but that, approving in silo one particular technology may actually do the actual opposite in getting out appropriate technologies out the door.
I would just like to mention that there's nothing in this petition that would not allow Con Edison to petition for additional cost recovery under the CDP program if it can bring forward some new proposals in the future. And in fact, Con Edison is not shy about requesting those sort of program modifications. We've addressed many of those type of petitions over the years.
Okay, good. I do also want to commend you because I do think that you have been very diligent in understanding all the different riders, and I've spent some time with you in talking about the sort of wonkiness of the language and the technicalities and the rider T and L and the SCs and all the different things, and I've been very impressed with your technical expertise, and I thank you for your time this last week on the different issues, and I am going to be voting in concurrence for this item. My hesitation really comes from the issues that I raised, and I do have concern, and I would like to see, going forward that we focus on those issues. But I do believe strongly that there is a good pathway here. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Berman. Commissioner Alisi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think time will tell on the $7.5 million figure. It's a relatively short pilot program. That's the nature of pilot programs. We find out fairly quickly how successful they are. But I find it an exciting program all the way around. First of all, the growth projections for this pilot program are intriguing to me. Secondly, I know there are many other things in it, but secondly, very important to me is the fact that they are expanding the program to small commercial customers too. So I find that to be appealing as well. I'm going to support the issue.
Thank you very much. I'll now proceed to call for a vote on item 301. My vote is in favor of the recommendation to approve the proposal filed by Consolidated Edison related to the Smart AC Kit program and Rider L, and authorizes the company's connected device program with a 3-year budget of $7.5 million as described. Commissioner Sayre, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Berman?
I concur.
Commissioner Walisi?
Yes.
Thank you. The item is approved and the recommendation is adopted. We now will move to the consent agenda. Do any of my fellow commissioners wish to recuse from voting on or wish to comment on any items on the consent agenda? Commissioner Sayre? Commissioner Berman? Commissioner Alisi?
No.
I will now proceed to call for a vote on the consent agenda. My vote is in favor of the recommendations on the consent agenda. Commissioner Sayre?
Aye.
Commissioner Berman? Commissioner Alisi?
Yes.
Thank you. The items are approved and the recommendations are adopted. Secretary Burgess, is there anything further to come before us today?
There's nothing more to come before us today on the regular agenda. The next commission meeting is January 18th.
Okay. So now I'm going to exercise some prerogative. The first is we're here in winter. And I want to remind everybody, just go on the record, seeking to remind consumers about staying safe lighting, avoiding scammers, and calling if you need help with energy costs. That can be an issue as the weather gets cold and we have winter weather alerts. So I encourage that. And I also want to go on record as encouraging the utilities to stay focused on their most vulnerable customers again as we go into the winter season. I also want to take stock of the year. This is my first year as chair. And as I reviewed what we've done, it's kind of a good list. So I want to put that into the record as well. So in January, the Commission announced the approval of a Con Ed rate case that included much greater energy efficiency, smart grid technologies, and other money-saving alternatives that would be available to an increasing number of customers. Also that same month, Governor Cuomo announced the closure of Indian Point, which led to an announcement and a task force headed in February, and a task force formed in February, headed by the Department of Public Service, to work closely with communities involved to make sure that they had what they needed going forward, that the employees had what they needed going forward, and also, of course, the Commission took care, and the Department took care to worry about the impact of that on the reliability of the energy system. Also in February, a $153 million settlement stemming from our investigation of the East Harlem gas explosion in 2014, and Governor Cuomo announced the expansion of the first ever Energy Affordability Act, which provides nearly 2 million low-income New Yorkers with direct energy cost relief each year. In March, we initiated the process. We approved an order enacting a new compensation structure to more accurately and efficiently and fairly value distributed energy resources across the state. In May, we took actions to advance the energy savings goals of a REV to allow in New York large commercial batteries in New York City. In June, we got an important annual review of the utility performance on some key areas that are very important to customers, most notably electric reliability and gas safety and electric safety. And we determined that the New York State utilities are performing at a satisfactory level. I'm going to skip the next item. I came on the job in June as well. In July, we announced a new area code, 838, coming out of the 518 area code. We also expanded and extended Con Ed's BQDM, Brooklyn Queens Demand Management Project, in a mode where we didn't add dollars, but we added impact, which is, of course, is a good outcome. In August, we directed Con Ed to take significant and immediate actions to improve the subway systems, the MTA's power reliability, and to prevent future service failures for New York City and New York City subway riders. And we approved an important, innovative solar project in New York that generated clean energy dedicated exclusively to low-income customers, a project undertaken by Con Ed. In September, we continued our implementation of the value of distributed energy resources, which we started in March, and the Commission approved the implementation of the new compensation system. And the Commission also approved a $13 million settlement agreement with Charter Communications after that company had failed to build out its cable network as required in its merger agreement. In October, the PSC approved an implementation plan to allow a number of municipalities to engage in CCA, community choice aggregation initiatives. We talked about the data plan, the data access associated with that today. And in October, the PSC also enacted the first consumer protection standards for a robust distributed energy resource market in New York. In November, the PSC approved NYSEG's and RG&E's plan to offer company-owned LED street lighting options for municipal customers, completing the scope across the entire state. And the Commission also approved Orange and Rockland Utilities' plan to roll out AMI, and we did some business today as well. So it has been a productive year. Now I get to do one of the things I love to do best, to put someone on the spot who deserves to be on the spot. I have a resolution to read out, and if the Commission agrees, we will vote on that resolution. Resolution of the Public Service Commission, of the State of New York. Whereas Tina Palmero has served the Department of Public Service, the Public Service Commission, and the citizens of the State of New York with great distinction since February 8, 1988. Whereas Ms. Palmero, having first been appointed as an Associate Transmission Facilities Analyst, served the department in a variety of roles, including Environmental Analyst, Chief Utility Programs, Chief Utility Environmental Operations and Compliance, and currently a Special Assistant. And whereas through Ms. Palmero's expertise and leadership throughout her 3 decades of service, especially in the Renewable Portfolio Standard, the Large-Scale Renewable Initiative, and the Clean Energy Standard, and the implementation of the state's New York Sun Initiative, Ms. Palmero has provided guidance to the Commission and achieved tremendous impact for the citizens of New York in aligning the energy and environmental policies for the benefit of all of those New York. Whereas Ms. Palmero has lead and supporting roles in a long list of projects and initiatives, including the Article 7 facility siting, the Article 10 electric generating facility siting, Section 68 generating and distribution facilities, and the State Environmental Quality Review Act administration. And whereas Ms. Palmero's expertise was brought to bear in other areas, including staffing for the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Committee of the National Association of Regulatory Commissioners, assisting with the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, and speaking in other forums where she thoughtfully and wisely explained and distilled Commission policies in an understandable manner. Quite a trick. Whereas Ms. Palmero worked with her colleagues tirelessly in the office and in the field, from the furthest ends of the vast Empire State to the heart of New York City, and has earned the admiration and respect of Department of Public Service and Public Service Commission, in addition to the stakeholders who participate in the department proceedings. And whereas Ms. Palmero's technical expertise, thoughtful analysis, calm demeanor have been brought to bear in an untold number of meetings, briefings, and commission sessions during her tenure, all to the great benefit of those who have had the very good fortune of working with Ms. Palmero. And whereas Ms. Palmero will have more time to spend with her family and friends and to pursue her passions, which include traveling, hiking, biking, and saving the gorillas in Africa, it is therefore resolved that the New York State Public Service Commission expresses its deepest appreciation to Tina Palmero for her leadership in the Department of Public Service and her faithful service to the citizens of the state of New York, as demonstrated by her unwavering commitment to the mission of the Commission to ensure safe, secure, and reliable access to gas, electric, gas, steam, telecommunications, and water services for all New York's residential and business consumers. May I put that to the vote of the Commission?
Yes.
Commissioner Lisi?
Yes, of course.
It's unanimous, it's great, and she's blushing.
I am here.
And now I'd like to invite my fellow commissioners, if they like, to say a few words.
I'm extremely sorry to see Tina go, and I wish we could convince her to stay. Tina has been a great expert, analyst, teacher, including explaining a number of very esoteric concepts and mechanisms to me personally, and a leader in her time here, and she's highly respected outside by all stakeholders as well as inside the department. Tina, you've been smart, tireless, fair, and effective in your time here, and I wish you the very best.
Commissioner Berman.
When I came as a staffer in the 90s, one of the first people I met was Tina. And I was very nervous because Tina was someone who was very well respected, had a lot of street cred, both in the commission and outside the commission in New York and nationally. One of the first things Tina did was asked me about, what I like to do outside of the commission. Started talking to me about where I wanted to, be, and just really sort of engaged me a little bit on a personal level and a professional level. Told me about this group called Weiss. It was like Weiss, and told me about getting involved in the Women in Communication and Energy. Really, Tina became one of the women that was really an informal mentor to me. I remember seeing her as a staffer presenting at session and thinking, oh my God, I would never want to have to present to commissioners. They ask really tough questions, and she seems so calm and cool and collected, and really in all of the settings that I've seen Tina in, I think that's what I most respected about her, was that she always was just very calm and thoughtful and very honest and reflected, and would give me food for thought, and made me want to do a better job, and always asked me about my family afterwards too. And I felt, I really feel a very strong personal loss, because we are losing someone with many, many, many years of experience. You can't really replace that. And you can't replace just the breadth and the knowledge like that, and just all the different things that she has been a part of, the negotiations, the different substantive things, and also her willingness to connect and to bring along younger people. For me personally, as a female, she reached out to me, and I don't know, she and others helped me push myself, and I appreciate that immensely. So I thank you, Tina, because you made a difference in my life, and I will miss you, and this commission will miss you. And you have an impact, personally and professionally. So, thanks.
Commissioner Lisi.
Yes, I was just thinking I've only been here 6 months, so it's very hard not to be sentimental, Tina. In any event, in those few short months, I have grown to respect your hard work, and I'm very happy for you in your new life, whatever it brings to you. But while I'm still here and you're out enjoying yourself and all of the others that are still here, I'm sure we'll always see trademarks of the things that you've done on behalf of the people in the state, and I just say thank you for that, and enjoy your life. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
So with that, it's a holiday season. I wish all of you, all New Yorkers, a very happy holiday season. Stay safe, stay warm, and enjoy the holidays. We are adjourned.